Breaking news from Washington. NBC News has confirmed reports that the Justice Department's Inspector General referred former FBI Director Jim Comey to the Justice Department over the leaking of memos to the media. But the DOJ declined to file charges against him. NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams is joining us now. More with this. Pete Williams, what more do we know?
Well, we knew that James Comey gave some of the memos that he wrote, the memos that he wrote after his meetings with President Trump, that he gave some of them after he was fired to a friend to pass along to the New York Times. And that's where we first found out about these meetings that Comey claimed he had with the president. What we didn't know is that the Inspector General of the Justice Department, in looking into several questions about the origins of the FBI's investigation of the Trump campaign, referred to the Justice Department, in other words, suggested to the Justice Department that they should look at whether to prosecute Comey for that. That's thing one we didn't know, and thing two is that the Justice Department, having looked at it, decided not to prosecute. Now, this is all part of a Inspector General's report that we've been expecting now for the last month or so to come out about the FBI's investigation of the Trump campaign and the predicates for it. In the meantime, there are other reviews going on. The Attorney General has launched one. There's another one being led by a special prosecutor appointed by the, U.S. Attorney up in Connecticut who's looking into this. So there's lots of analysis being looked at, and we expect to get this in the entire Inspector General's report any time now. The Attorney General himself had said it would come out within the next several weeks. And I guess it depends on what your definition of several is, but we just expect to see it at any point in the next maybe couple of weeks.
Pete, I'm not quite sure the president's necessarily going to be happy about this decision. Any idea if he's responded to this, reacting to this in any way?
No, I no idea. The Justice Department has to make the decision based on what the evidence is, and apparently one of the factors here is that one of these memos was classified at a very low level. I think a couple of them were classified after they were turned over. This sometimes happens where documents are retroactively classified. So all those things may enter into this, but I'm sure that the tone of the Inspector General's report when it comes out will have more criticism for the FBI and for Comey, as the last one did.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.